Thanks for stopping by for another video. If this video is of any help and you want to support the channel, please take a quick moment to subscribe and drop a comment and a like. Today we're tying up a Bleedin Minnow. In the vise we have a partridge of Redditch Sea Prince hook in size 1. It's model CS52, and we're using some Semperfli classic wax thread 6/0 in gray. Go ahead and lay down a small thread base, and about a third the way down the shank, you're going to go ahead and tie in some eyes. And I'm going to do a couple small wraps just to have it not fall off, and then I'm going to invert them on the hook so that they're riding underneath. This way it rides hook point down, but it's still going to get the weight and the jigging action that we want. We're going to go ahead and invert our hook real quick, do some catching wraps underneath the eyes, and then we're going to flip it back around and grab some super glue so that we can get these eyes to lock into place and increase the durability of this fly. Now we're going to go ahead and do a couple more wraps to lock these in place, get them all nice and squared up, balance the middle of the dumbbell eyes in the middle of the hook shank so that it keeps it as even keeled as possible, and then lock things into place. And now we're going to let that super glue dry for a moment. And thanks to the magic of video editing, that's already over with. So we're going to go ahead and grab some rabbit zonker strip, and we're going to measure out 1 hook length, and then we're going to take our thread and take that back to the curve of the hook. Then we're going to tie that rabbit zonker in. We're going to spread the fur so we can have a clean tie-in point, and just tie 3 nice tight wraps, keeping that zonker strip on top of the hook. And then we'll pull our materials back and do a couple of tight locking wraps just to make sure that material stays in place. We'll pull our zonker back so that it's out of the way a little bit. And what we'll do now is we'll grab some barred silly legs. These are amber and black silly legs. And we'll take a full leg, fold it in half, and tie that in straight back on the hook on the side towards us. And then we'll grab a second leg and do the same thing. Fold it around the thread and tie that in on the far side of the hook going straight back. And you'll see that I have that going forward about a centimeter length. That gives you a nice long straight line to tie those in on and gives you a good clean tie-in point. Now that we've tied those in, we're going to work our thread back just a little bit. And now we're going to grab some dubbing. This is pseudo peacock dubbing in gray color, and we're gonna do a dubbing noodle. Just wrap that around your thread, and we're gonna do a couple of dubbing noodles of this thread or of this color just so we can work our way up the body of the fly. So wrap that in and make a generously thick body, but something that you can make uniform all the way up to those dumbbell eyes. So now we'll go ahead and grab another section of dubbing and do the same thing over again. Just dub that up, keep it consistently thick, and just build that body so we can get all the way to the eye of the hook. Tighten that last little section up, and we'll do one more small section of dubbing just to get all the way excuse me, all the way up to the eyes. And now that we're up to the eyes, we're going to go ahead and grab another pair of rubber legs and tie one on right behind the eye, kind of in the little gap that's between the dubbed body and the eye of the dumbbell. See me locking that into place right there. And just pull that back so that it's flowing backwards towards the back of the hook. Grab a second leg and repeat the process. Then I pull those legs back just a little bit and do a couple of trapping wraps just to make sure that everything gets caught right behind the eye. Now we're going to work on the underbody of our fly. We're going to take some Starburst fibers in Pearl Aurora, and we're going to preen or pull those apart gently so they can get the fibers all aligned and give us the longest possible fiber. We're going to get our legs to move out of the way when we invert the hook. And we're going to measure that out so that it goes about the full length of the zonker hide. And we're going to, real quick before we tie in our dubbing underbody, we're going to put a thin bead of UV resin right along the zonker hide and make it about a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch length and cure that in place. That'll give you some additional rigidity in that tail so that it makes it way less prone to fouling the rabbit zonker on the curve of the hook. Now we're going to go ahead and take that fiber that we've already set up and measure it so that, like I said, it's almost the full length of the zonker hide. And tie that in. You'll have just a little bit extending forward beyond the dumbbell eyes. And that's completely fine. That's going to give you a little bit additional volume because we're going to center that on top of the hook, tie it down, and then fold it back. And where these are small and manageable clumps, it allows you to build some additional volume, and you can layer it and it won't cause any funky tapering because it's a smaller section. Then go ahead and repeat the process, just pulling it so that it's not quite as far back so you can have a moderate taper. And we'll trim this at the very end to give it more of a standard baitfish-y style profile. Lock those in place in the same manner. And then advance your thread to right in front of the eyes and take another small clump. And we're going to tie that in right in front of the eye with a couple wraps, and then we're going to skip right behind the eye. That way we cover up any of our thread wraps for the eye. And it gives a little bit of extra shimmer where we're tying in the bleeding gills next. The next section is some red dubbing. I'm using deep blood leech dubbing. And I'll take a small clump. This is going to be the smallest clump out of all of them. You want to keep it pretty wispy and narrow. Tie that in on top of the hook, right in front of the eyes, and then go right behind the eyes, lock it in place with a couple of wraps, put your thread forward, and you'll see how long that is. You don't want it quite that long, so I'm going to angle it straight back from the eye to the hook point and trim it flush right there. Now we'll go ahead and flip our fly back over. We'll grab our zonker, and we're going to tie that in right in front of the eye, pulling the rabbit hide tight. And then get that locked into place with a couple wraps. Trim off your excess. Then you're going to preen the rabbit zonker fibers back and just lock that down nice and tight. And for a measure of added durability, you can go ahead and do a dot of super glue. I'm going to put one right there as well, just to sink that in and link it to the hook as best we can. And then just do a couple of thread wraps over the top of that to bind that in nice and tight. From here, we're going to go ahead and create a loop. We're going to tie our thread up and loop around the thread twice to get this dubbing loop going. And in this loop, we're going to take some of the remainder gray rabbit strip that we have and trim it off of the hide and pin that into the loop. So once we get our loop opened up again, we're going to slide our material right on in. pin it down, even up the butt ends a little bit. And then we're going to go ahead and spin that up into a nice buggy collar. This is one of my favorite things to watch happen. I love watching things spin in dubbing loops. Or when you're making dubbing brushes or whatever type of brushes. I love watching the spin happen. Spin that up nice and tight, and now we're going to go ahead and wrap that back right to in front of the eyes and preen everything back, and we're just going to wrap with nice tight touching wraps this rabbit collar all the way forward to the eye of the hook. And make sure to preen those fibers back, trapping as little as you can. And you can see we're getting a nice close setup to the eye of the hook. Get your thread right in there, and then go ahead and catch the tag end of that dubbing loop and tie it off. Then once that's tied off, go ahead and clip the loose end of the dubbing loop and immediately go for the whip finish. You don't want to add too many thread wraps right here or you'll get a bulkier head. So we'll go ahead and do our whip finish, preening the materials back so that they don't get caught in the whip finish. Now go ahead and cut your thread. From here, we're going to go ahead and just do a couple of small dots of UV resin. Just hit it right on top of those thread wraps. Let it soak in a little bit. Invert your hook and repeat the process, pulling everything back. Had a loose fiber I had to pull out of the way. And then go ahead and grab your UV light and zap that so that it gets cured up. And now all that's left is to do some finishing touches of trimming the fly. So to trim this up, your rear legs are going to go the length of the zonker hide. Flip it over so you can see me to the other side. And the front legs are going to go back to the bend of the hook. And then we're going to take the fly out of the vise. And I apologize for this getting a little difficult to see right here. Just trim that down kind of in a curve from the bend of the hook towards the back and trim off that dubbing so you get a little bit of a tapered profile there. And there you go. You have the finished Bleedin Minnow. Please swing by the shop, pick up a couple, or grab the materials to tie them. Subscribe to the video. Thank you.